Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here. No Gavin today, but I am getting into some rumors about the Knicks that have been circulating. We've got Immanuel Quickley rumors from our buddy Ian Begley, Evan Fournier contract rumors from Begley and from Jake Fischer of Yahoo Sports. Are the Knicks looking for a backup big from Stefan Bondy of the Daily News? And a bunch more. Plus, I'm going to be getting into the Knicks summer league game against the Magic and some of my takeaways from that. And I'm not the most impressed, if I'm being completely honest. But we'll get into it next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode and you can become an everydayer. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And as I said in the intro, we've got some news and rumors. I thought it'd be good to do a little catch up towards the end of the week here and kind of see where we're at. Obviously, the Knicks have spent their largest chunk of money that they're going to in free agency on Dante DiVincenzo, but there's still some things that could potentially happen, and one of those is an Immanuel Quickley contract extension coming off of his rookie deal. The Knicks are eligible to negotiate said extension all the way up through the beginning of the regular season, and how much that ends up being worth is of course going to be a point of contention among Knicks fans, because I think that fans still have a different sense of what money is worth in the NBA at this point. The salary cap is going to be close to $140 million this coming season, so that's important to consider when we get into this little news bite from Ian Begley talking about Immanuel Quickley on Zach Lowe's The Low Post podcast. Begley said, I would be surprised if they didn't come to an agreement with Quickley on an extension, whether it's $20 million, $18 million annually, because they like Quickley as a player and also because other teams will like Quickley as a player. So this is a number that Gavin and I have thrown around quite a bit. And I think Gavin is even at times said he'd be willing to pay upwards of what like RJ Barrett is getting paid, which is more like $25 to $27 million a season for Quickley. And I've been saying the whole time, somewhere in that 18 to $20 million range, very comfortable as far as I'm concerned. I think that is going to be the going rate for just a good rotation player in the NBA now. I think that we're going to see that. And, I have a note on Josh Hart that came from Ian Begley as well in just a minute. But I think that's going to be sort of a number that we've got to get used to, as $20 million no longer is a number reserved for like star players. I know that that's always the number, like, oh, Mari Stoudemire got 20 million a season, and the 5-year $100 million contract, and the $100 million contract for Allen Houston, and like, oh my God, and then those guys were injured and blah blah blah. It was terrible. $20 million. It's this number that's like seared in the brains of Knicks fans, I feel like, and has a ton of negative connotations with it, just because of the fact that they've handed out a number of deals that were worth over $20 million a season in the past that have not worked out. But if you look at the landscape around the league, I say this all the time, and I'll continue saying it, there are guys that are going to be getting paid like upwards of $60 million by the ends of their contracts in the NBA right now. There is a new TV deal coming in 2 seasons in 2025 that could potentially shake things up and make the salary cap explode once again, similar to what we saw back in the 2016 offseason when the salary cap went from $60 million to $90 million in one fell swoop. It has since, in the years past since 2016, now gone from 90 million up to, as I said, almost 140 million. When a new TV deal comes around, that generally means big money. I mean, we might see the NBA salary cap go as high as 180 to $200 million potentially if this next TV deal is super, super lucrative, which I don't see why it wouldn't be. The league is as big as it's ever been. So 20 million for Immanuel Quickley or 18 million for Immanuel Quickley is totally reasonable. And I think that given the impact that he has on the floor, given the flashes of something better that we've seen, I think there's a good chance that you sign him to a $20 million deal annually. And you look at it by year 2 and say, this is a steal. Very similar to Jalen Brunson, which, if you recall, a lot of people bellyached about the Jalen Brunson deal this past year. And then he looks like one of the best value contracts in the NBA now. So I don't know. I have a very hard time being upset about this Immanuel Quickley rumored $18 to $20 million price point, because I think it's going to end up being a great deal for the Knicks. I think that you'll ultimately look at that Quickley deal and say, wow, this worked out really good for the Knicks. Similar to other rookie extensions that have been, at the time thought to be like, oh, is that a little bit too much? And then the player ends up totally outplaying it. And you say, all right, well, this wasn't a bad investment after all. In fact, it was a great investment. I think that's where we'll probably be with Quickley in a couple years. Also, we have a couple of little notes on Evan Fournier and his contract. First, from Ian Begley in an article for SNY. One team tracking the value of expiring contracts and trades says New York placed a high value on Fournier's contract, which is for $18.8 million in 2023-24 and has a team option in 2024-25. And then Jake Fischer of Yahoo Sports says rival front offices continue to say New York remains engaged on trade avenues for veteran shooter Evan Fournier, and the Knicks are amenable to doing so as part of a multi-team framework, sources said. So that's an interesting note. I mean, what do the Knicks consider high value for Evan Fournier's deal? Is the high value just that it'll allow some other team to have a big chunk of salary to aggregate to then complete a big deal? Like, for example, I was just mentioning there are players that are going to be making upwards of $60 million. Damian Lillard's one of those guys. Currently is going to be making, I think, over 50 million this upcoming season. That's a large chunk of salary to match. So is that where the Knicks are saying, hey, we have $20 million in salary, as much as it kind of sucks to just turn Evan Fournier into a big chunk of money. But they might be able to say, hey, Miami, you guys don't have enough salary to get this deal done, or at least not without completely eviscerating your team. Send us some of the assets that we're going to go to Portland, and then we can talk. And whether that's picks or what have you. I mean, I don't know what they would consider high value at this point anyway. Is that a handful of second round picks? Is that a first round pick? I don't know. But I do think that it would be also difficult to say then, oh, or the team, if you're dealing with a team that doesn't have a surplus of picks that's trying to make a big deal, like Miami, for example, trying to get Lillard, it becomes a little bit of a hard sell to like Portland then to be like, hey, we're going to take away some of the asset return you can get for your superstar that you're giving up in this deal, and just so that we can get involved and make the salaries match. So I don't know exactly how much the Knicks will be able to get for Fournier. If that's the case, I would probably consider it more likely that they end up holding on to Fournier themselves rather than having him just be part of some other deal, unless they can get a premium return. Because in reality, if the Knicks are able to get another star themselves, then they would probably look to just have Fournier for that deal, because then they might not necessarily have to include some of their guys that they don't want to give up on just for the purposes of salary matching. So it'll be an interesting situation to keep an eye on, and one that we'll certainly keep you guys updated on. But I got more to talk about. Some more stuff from some articles. Stefan Bondy of the Daily News says the Knicks might be looking for a veteran big. Ian Begley has a note on OG Anunoby and his potential availability, again from the Low Post. And then Begley once more has a note on Josh Hart as well. So lots more to talk about. But first, I got to remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. And whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy can help you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. And therapy is helpful. It's something that not enough people turn to, and it can really help you learn positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It can empower you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who have experienced trauma. It's everyday life is sometimes daunting. It's you go through life and have various experiences and different things to deal with. Work could be stressful. Your relationships can be stressful. Family, everything. There's all these things that just add up, and it can be good to talk to somebody and work through those issues and make yourself into the best version of yourself by learning how to cope with things, learning how to set boundaries with people. It's a very useful thing, even if you're not necessarily going there for a pointed specific reason. A mental health professional can help you sort through those things. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, and I'm back in talking more Knicks rumors here, and there's a bunch. So first, from Stefan Bondy of the New York Daily News, according to a source, the Knicks are monitoring the free agent market for a veteran big. So that's good to know. I have been lobbying for this for the last week or week and change, however long it's been since they traded Obi Toppin. I think they need another. I think they need another backup big, preferably a guy who is a backup four that can at least a little bit shoot the three. I think that that's going to be very important if you want to fill that Obi Toppin hole behind Julius Randle. I don't think that you can turn to RJ Barrett and Josh Hart the entire time to be your backup four. I just think you're going to suffer too much in terms of rebounding, and just sometimes you just need two guys that are the right size out there. And I'm really not on board with the idea of Jericho Sims being the backup four. Also, I'll get to him in a second, but watched a little Isaiah Roby at the summer league, and I gotta say, I don't see a guy that I would be comfortable plugging into a playoff team as a backup four. So I think this is prudent for the Knicks. They still have their $4.2 million biannual exception that they could use this year as well if they want to spend that. They also saved a small smidge of money of the regular mid-level exception on the Dante DiVincenzo contract. So they could use a little bit of that, I think, to pay slightly more than veterans minimum to somebody. But I think if they use the biannual exception, that could be useful. I think that has to be a contract of at least 2 years. Now, of course, that might put them into the luxury tax as well. But I mean, James Dolan at this point sees a playoff team and probably would be okay with turning into a tax-paying team. But the Knicks front office might be like, what, let's save that for next year or something. It's also possible that if the Knicks want to, I just talked about Fournier's contract potentially being an asset in the last segment, but it's possible that if the Knicks want to, they could pay someone with that biannual exception, then just say, hey, here's 2 second-round picks, Detroit or whomever still has some cap space hanging around. Here, just take a couple second-round picks, and here's Evan Fournier's deal. We don't want to pay the tax this year. We'll pay a couple second-round picks to not pay the tax this year, which would be disappointing because that would essentially mean that the OB deal would be a wash. But whatever. It's an avenue that could present itself to them. And we've already gone over some of the potential guys that the Knicks could go after as backup fours in free agency. Again, the guy I keep coming back to is JaMychal Green. I just feel like he would be a good investment, not to go too all in on former Warriors from this past season, but I think JaMychal Green is, he's not a fantastic defender, but on offense, at least he can shoot the three. He rebounds the ball pretty well. I think that's a guy that the Knicks could look at as a veteran addition to just kind of play those like 12 to 13 minutes behind Julius Randle most nights. But also he isn't so good that it feels like you're restricting yourself from potentially throwing RJ Barrett or Josh Hart out there for stretches as the four. So I think that would be a worthwhile investment for the Knicks. I'm glad to see that they're apparently still looking at the free agent market for a big. Gavin had a great show with Sean Woodley of the Locked On Raptors podcast the other day about OG Anunoby, but a little cold water on that from Ian Begley once more on the low post. As of late last week, I hadn't heard anything about Toronto even listening or taking calls on OG Anunoby. Obviously, that could change, but I would assume they're keeping Anunoby going into the season. So there you have it. Could just be a tactic from Masai Ujiri from the Raptors, to say, hey, well, unless someone's willing to pay this huge price tag that we've placed on OG Anunoby, we're not going to trade him. But, it's a huge price tag that they're apparently asking for. And they're asking for like a star level return. And I think that maybe teams around the league are going to wait until the Lillard trade happens to see what goes on there, till the Harden trade happens as well. Can't forget that like James Harden still very much wants to go to the Clippers. So I think that teams around the league are going to kind of wait and see those trades go down before they make a deal for someone like an OG Anunoby, because I think the star market is in the process of resetting itself, mostly because salary matters more than it ever has now with these luxury tax penalties and with the huge burdens that the luxury tax can potentially put on you as far as team building. I think that the cost of these superstars that are making a ton of money is going to go down, and when the star market goes down, then the role player or high level role player market, like for OG Anunoby, will also go down in theory, because then they can't turn around and say, well, Donovan Mitchell got what was it, 4 picks and 3 swaps or whatever. So, or like Rudy Gobert, I know got that much, so that means that OG Anunoby is worth at least 3 first round picks. Now you'll be able to say as the opposing GM, well, no, actually Damian Lillard only got like 2 first round picks back, and some good players. So you can have like a first round pick and a really good player for OG Anunoby or something like that. So we'll see how that all goes. But that's my working theory on that. And then one more note from Ian Begley on Josh Hart in an article. This is actually from a few of the beat writers wrote articles about Dante DiVincenzo, where Steph Curry talked very, very favorably about him. So if you want, look that up from, I know at least Ian Begley and Stefan Bondy had articles about this, because Steph was getting ready to play in a golf tournament, and so did a round of interviews and was asked a few questions about Dante DiVincenzo, spoke extremely highly of Dante. So if you want that, go check that out. But in that article, Ian Begley notes on Josh Hart. Hart is eligible for an extension for as long as 4 years and as much as $81 million. And I would expect it to come in at under the max number. So under the max number means that Begley expects Hart to get less than 20 million a season. I think that's reasonable. If I were a betting man, I would put Hart's next contract in the $16 to $18 million range, just based off what other guys are getting around the league. I think that certain players' contracts are going to be a little cost controlled by this new CBA as well, and by teams being scared of that new second luxury tax apron, which makes it so that then you don't have as much ability to build your team the way that you want to. So I think that's probably going to influence guys like Hart's contract. I think it's influencing Quickley's as well a little bit. So we'll see how that all goes in the end. But yeah, I think 16 to 18 million for Hart, and it sounds like Ian's hearing the same stuff. So I guess we'll see later in the summer. We'll probably see an extension for Hart, and quite possibly an extension for Quickley coming down the line. So we'll see how that all goes. But the Knicks have been playing in summer league. Gavin and I haven't really been talking about it because there's not as much to watch for this year. If we're being completely honest, it did not feel like a huge priority. That said, once I saw that the Knicks won against the Magic the other day and that they had a game winner, I figured, you know what, I should probably watch this. So I did go and watch that game, and I've got some notes on that in the next segment, including why I think Jaylen Martin was pretty impressive. They're undrafted free agent signing. So we'll get into that in just a second. But first, I do have to remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. And I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about Birddogs yet, but they are my new favorite shorts. They are so freaking comfortable. They have stretch khaki that has 4-way flex, which if you don't understand what that means, just take your pants, try to stretch them to the left and right, and then try to stretch them up and down. If they don't stretch both those ways, they're not 4-way flex. Some of your pants might not even be 2-way flex. So, step your game up if that's the case. But they are super comfortable. They have a liner on the inside as well, which for sweaty dudes like me means, little undercarriage sweat is not going to, put me down during the summer, and I can still be comfortable no matter what. But yeah, I've been loving them. I loved my Bird Dogs so much. Like, full disclosure, they sent me a free pair to test so that I could talk about them. And I've already gone back and bought multiple pairs of Bird Dog shorts and pants because they're that comfortable, they're durable, and they look really, really good. I really like how they make me look. So if you want to get some for yourself, go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnba or promo code LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. I can definitely promise you that. All right, and I'm back in talking Knicks Summer League this time. So I the Knicks won 82-80 over the Magic the other day in Summer League, and I have a confession to make. I had not watched a single game up to that point. A little liberating in its own way. I mean, when the Knicks made no draft picks this year, it's a little hard to get excited for Summer League. There's nobody to really see that is gonna, like knock your socks off or be like, oh, this is a guy they just spent a first round pick on. Like, I bet that this guy's going to have a role. It really had me yearning a little bit for the golden era of Knicks Summer League, even though they didn't do that well overall in the win-loss column. But like Immanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes all on one team together, Jericho Sims, all those guys on one team together. That was pretty cool a couple of years ago. So, no such luck this time around. It's a little more subdued as far as the hype for this Knicks Summer League team. But that said, I think there was still some guys to look for. So I'll apologize to the rest of the guys on the team, but I basically just wanted to see Jaylen Martin, Trevor Keels, and Isaiah Roby. The story on those three guys: Jaylen Martin, undrafted free agent signee by the Knicks. I believe they've already signed him to a two-way deal. So he played for Overtime Elite, which is where the Thompson twins came from. They're obviously crushing in Summer League right now. And he was sort of an unheralded player out of that same league. So, definitely a guy that I'm intrigued to see. Still very young. He's only 19 years old, so that's cool. Trevor Keels, also still only 19 years old, despite getting ready to enter his second season. He was the Knicks' second-round pick last year, played on a two-way deal. I think he saw maybe like 5 minutes of NBA action last year, even in garbage time, because he really did not look ready for the NBA last year. So was intrigued to see some more of him, see how he's developed. And then Isaiah Roby, the Knicks signed to a deal right towards the end of last season. And I believe he's still under contract as of right this second for like $2 million or something like that. He's played 4 seasons prior to this year. So he's going to be going into his 5th NBA season. He actually started a decent amount of games over 2 years for the Thunder, averaged over 10 points per game in one of those seasons, but the percentages will not blow you away. Playing for an obviously tanking team too in the Thunder. So, you don't want to read into that too much, but a guy that if you listen to my YouTube comments, that everybody keeps saying every time we say, oh, the Knicks don't have a backup four, they go, Isaiah Roby, he started a bunch of games for the Thunder, blah, blah, blah. He's in Summer League, this, that, the other. Okay, fine. Let's go. Let's take a look. So I watched this game after I've had all these DVRing, but they've been sitting in my DVR unwatched so far. But I went in after I saw the Knicks won this game. So they wind up winning 82-80 in overtime. They did like the oh my god, why is the name escaping me? The rule style where they just add a certain number of points to the final score at the end of regulation, and then once you reach that target score, then you win. So they added 7 points, made the target score 82, and Jaylen Martin came through with a game winner, so that was exciting. The rest of the game, not super exciting, pretty sloppy. It had serious like Knicks versus Heat vibes in the sense that the Knicks just could not make a three to save their life this entire game. I think they shot like 25% on threes in this game. Clearly not a ton of perimeter shooting talent on this team right now. But I zeroed in on Trevor Keels first as the incumbent, the second year player, which usually is a role that the Knicks take pretty seriously in Summer League. They usually, Dice Yoshimoto usually will be like, hey, Dice Yoshimoto, head coach of the Summer League, I should say. But he'll usually be like, hey, second year guy, you should be, ready to sort of take over and guide this team a bit. And we saw that with Immanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin 2 years ago. We saw it with Quentin Grimes last season when he really stepped up and showed that he could potentially be a lot more. And I was expecting to see that from Keels, and I don't think he's there yet. They did have him running point, at least on the on like the roster card, like the starting lineup card, he was running point, I guess, and they did kind of put the ball in his hands to start things on a lot of the early possessions, but I didn't really feel like he was running a true point guard, so to speak. He wasn't really like the guy setting the table for everybody. They just kind of get a lot of motion going once they get into their half court, which is good. I like seeing that. I like seeing, that these guys are being taught up on how to, run a lot of motion and come off screens and stuff like that. So that's always good to see. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll throw the one positive out there first from Keels. He did seem to be directing traffic a lot in the sense that like he looked like the vet when like other guys had the ball. He was the one, you could see him gesticulating to guys being like, no, up there, pass up there, hit this guy, do this, do that. And yet when he had the ball in his hands himself, I was not super impressed. The shot selection was not fantastic. It seemed like he was getting to some so-so looks like in the mid-range and whatever and taking those. I would have loved to have seen him try to get all the way to the hoop more. Um, the three-point shooting did not move me. I don't even know what his final total was. I decided to throw no stats in this. I'm just going eye test only, but his three-point shooting did not look fantastic. And overall, I hate to say this, but I'm still not sold on his physique or his burst. Um, he still just doesn't look like he's in NBA shape. He allegedly has put on like 3-4 inches, something like that, over the course of this past year, and that I could see. He looks taller, like for sure. I think he's reported now to supposedly be around like 6'7" or something like that. I forget who said that. I think it was Mitchell Robinson or something on like Twitter. Um, but or maybe Josh Hart. I don't know. But either way, one of the Twitter active Knicks players said that he got a lot taller. I could sort of see that, but he still just doesn't. He doesn't look particularly in shape. That's the nicest way I could put it. And he doesn't look like he's worked on improving too much from last year. Like his burst is still just basically non-existent. He doesn't have like a huge amount of handle or moves to make up for that. Like Jalen Brunson, for example, does not have the craziest burst you've ever seen, and yet he has a just fantastic handle and just so many moves that can make up for whatever physical inadequacies he has. I just don't see that with Keels yet. And then on defense, he was a disaster. I mean, he really just he had a hard time keeping anybody in front of him. There was a stretch, I think, in the third quarter where he committed like 3 fouls in a row. Where I was just like, well, you just fouled this guy strictly because you couldn't keep him in front of you at this point. And so I didn't love seeing that. I don't know. I'm not a Trevor Keels believer yet. Next guy, Jaylen Martin. I think there's something there with Jaylen Martin. I think he looks very raw. He needs to improve his handle. He needs to improve his burst a bit. He still looks like he still looks like a teenager. You know what I mean? Like he's not there. He needs a year of an NBA weight program and a strength and conditioning program and all that stuff. But you know, unlike Keels, I could see a little more of an outline there, which is encouraging to me. I think that his outside shooting definitely needs work. He needs to put up like a million 3-pointers this year and potentially try to get that down. But his ability to attack off the dribble was pretty good. He seemed pretty good at getting inside. He was smart about not attacking a defense. So it was 2 set on the inside and instead, spraying out to shooters and looked pretty good in that regard. Of course, would have helped if the Knicks made some more shots, but I thought that he did a good job of finding the open man, usually for like a corner 3 if he was on a drive. Definitely like that. Of course, had the game-winning floater too, which I liked seeing that. He really worked through contact on that shot, which is encouraging as well. So, hopefully he gets a lot of reps in the G League this year. I can't see this guy contributing to the big Knicks for at least another at least till a year from now, but probably 2 years, if I'm being honest. Like probably like 2 full seasons he would spend mostly in the G League and maybe on a two-way deal, and then maybe he's developed himself enough to try to come up and earn a rotation spot. But given the fact that this guy went through overtime elite, like I think he understands. I think he's going to understand like what it takes to, really grind and do stuff to get yourself noticed. Because that was not the biggest showcase for guys with college obviously existing and the G League Ignite program, which has a higher stature. Like you really had to bust your butt in overtime elite to, kind of get the attention of these NBA scouts. And so I could potentially see something there. Also the second year in a row, the Knicks have gone for an overtime elite guy. in the summer league. So that's intriguing as well. After they had Gene Montero last year. So I don't know, little fun fact. Anyway, the last guy I wanted to highlight was Isaiah Roby. And again, we get YouTube comments all the time saying like, this guy could be the backup four the Knicks are looking for, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know, man. I don't really see it, if I'm being completely honest. First off, I don't trust him to do anything that takes more than 2 dribbles on offense. His handle is atrocious. And I understand as a 4, you don't necessarily need to have the tightest handle or whatever, but man, it was bad. I mean, even to the point where he had a relatively straightforward transition opportunity and was dribbling down the floor and couldn't even keep track of his dribble. He had to go left with his left hand at that point. Couldn't even keep track of his dribble with his left hand at that point enough to drive the floor and go up for a clean layup and wound up getting blocked. Don't love that. Especially because this guy is not in the same class as the rest of these guys on the Knicks summer league team. He's going to be a 5th-year NBA player. Like, he's seen NBA action for 4 years now and still looks this raw. I don't think I trust him to come in and be signed and be a backup for. Outside of the dribbling, I mean, he doesn't seem to have the best touch. Like, certainly not enough that I'd be like, okay, this makes up for the fact that he can only take 2 dribbles, because he can just get the ball in the post and take a quick turnaround little baby hook or whatever, or he can shoot the 3 or something, so he could basically just play defense and get the 3 and whatever. I don't really see any of that. If I'm being completely, I don't think he has a 3-point shot either. I don't think he has much of a jumper to begin with. I would love to be proven wrong there. Maybe if the Knicks decide to go with him as their backup 4, maybe I'll be proven wrong here and I'll have to eat crow. But and it certainly wouldn't be the first time. But I don't see it with him as of right now. And then on defense, he had a couple decent man defense. Like one-on-one situations. Had a nice block on, I don't know who, on the Magic at one point. Someone was driving in and he blocked them in a one-on-one scenario. So that's cool to see. But other times I saw him, and he didn't necessarily always get burned for it, but I saw a lot of times where he sort of was losing track of his man, and while ball watching a little too much of what was going on away from him. And so I don't, based off watching him just a little bit, I don't have a ton of faith that he's like a great off-ball defender either. And maybe does a little too much ball watching on defense. So I don't know. I hate to just do one segment on the guy and crap all over him, but I'm not really super sold on Isaiah Roby either. So I guess my overall summary, and apologies if we don't end up doing any more summer league content, but I kind of doubt any of these guys will see much, if any, time with the actual New York Knicks this year. I'm really not impressed with where Keels is at right now, and I think that he needs to do a lot more work, both in the gym, preparing his body for the NBA, but also in the gym getting more shots up. His shot did not look great. Shot like 3 of 13 or something. That is one box score number I did look up. His overall shooting, it was not great. So Keels has a lot more work to do. Roby, I'm not sold on as some like NBA level backup for. I think that he will probably spend most of his time with the Westchester Knicks this year. But Jaylen Martin, maybe there's something there, and he's only 19 years old. Maybe could be the latest undrafted free agent success story. It's been a while since the Knicks had one of those, dating back to like Langston Galloway, maybe I think would be their greatest undrafted free agent success story. But those guys usually come up on a team with less to play for, or the Heat or the Raptors somehow. So I guess we'll see how that goes. But hopefully he works on his game and has a good year in the G League this year. But at any rate, I think that's it. So thank you guys all for listening to this episode. Be sure to check in. I think I'm going to put out a Saturday one as well tomorrow. So keep your ears out for that. But until then, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.